Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to be going over some of the BIDS file structure and how to organize your files in this way. So this video will be a very basic. BIDS is a very elaborate project. And in this video, the goal is to just show how to do the basics. So for example, organizing your behavioral and EEG data or MEG data in this file structure. So to start off with, you need a couple of packages, and all of this file structuring is done in Python, and it relies on packages such as MNE and MNE BIDS. If you're not familiar with Python, I would recommend downloading either Anaconda Jupyter Notebook or Anaconda Spiders. These are relatively intuitive to run these code lines. You don't need a lot of knowledge about Python, as you'll see in a moment, because you can run almost all these lines without editing much. So to start off with, we're going to be importing all these packages in the first section and define our root directory. Now, something important to keep in mind is that we need a relatively recent version of MNE. Here, I am using 0.24.0. as older versions might not be compatible with this MNE BIDS package. Okay, so after we have defined our root directory, this is the folder where we'll be creating this BIDS file structure, which is which I organized here on the right-hand side. We can get started with our data. So typically in our BIDS file structure, we also have one folder which just creates the source data. This is just the raw data that you got from the scanner that is kind of kept aside, because BIDS will generally convert the data into a standardized format. So it's always good to keep your raw data ready and together with the project. So this is where we'll be pulling all the data from and writing into the file structure. So to start off with, we're gonna kick off with the EEG data, which is in this case a set file. We for MNE, it preferably reads in FIF files, as you see here. So we can convert our set file to FIF. There are a range of packages or functions for this from EEG Lab or Curry or whatever your current file format is. You can read that on the MNE page. So we'll just import our data and we'll just write it out as a FIF file in our source data. Okay, now we have our file ready and we can start with the BIDS formatting. So the first thing we are going to do here, after we've done this for every file we're going to use, which is going to import the first file, in this case, the same one we just created. And in MNE, you'll see that after we've read in this file, this file has a bunch of labels and information already stored, read in from the raw file. And You can add to this or remove from this as you please. Now we've added the line frequency in here. Next up, we just read in the event data. This is also something you can read more about on the M&E page. And the next important step is that we create our BIDS path. So we specify the subject that we're going to be organizing, in this case, subject 4, the task or project name, the acquisition number, data type, e.g. root directory. If you have multiple sessions or runs, you can also add these into this BIDS path function like this. In this case, I only have one acquisition, so I'll leave it like this. Next up, we're gonna write our BIDS structure. So it takes in the event data, the raw data, and the BIDS path. And when we run this, you'll see on the right-hand side, it generates a range of files. We see participant information. We see a README file. We see dataset description. And importantly, this folder for subject 4, which contains a folder for EEG data. And this again contains the EEG data right here. For example, the channels, the events, and also importantly, the JSON file with information about the session and the EEG placements. You can see here that a lot of information is missing from this file, which is not ideal. So we want to fix this before we move on to the next data file. So firstly, we just find the path to this JSON file so we can start editing it. And then we use this function to edit the details of this JSON file. You can find the function right here. This is what I added in here myself. And this is something you will need to edit for your own project. You have to put in the task name, the details of the amplifier, and remaining recording details. Once you filled in these details, you can go back to the script and you can run this function. You'll see now that the JSON file you just created contains all the relevant bits of information. If you are not working with EEG data, but MEG data, you can repeat the same process for MEG. In this case, the header information will be a bit more accurate than the EEG data, so you'll probably have less issues with this. I will now move on to the BIDS, the behavioral BIDS data organizing scripts. And to illustrate what I feed into these functions, I have a CSV file with all the trials and trial informations of this experiment. So in this case, we see all the variables as columns and all the trials as rows. And what we're going to do is we create, again, this BIDS path structure for subject 4. In this case, we say it's a behavioral session here. Then we specify the path to the raw file name. And we write the file structure. In this case, this is a function that I have put together based on the existing scripts out there. So this is more of a customized function. and is not fully compatible with BIDS yet. In the future, they might bring out different modalities like eye tracking, respiratory recordings, possibly also a better behavioral module. But until then, this is a function you could potentially use. As you can see, it has created next to the EEG folder a behavioral folder. This behavioral folder now contains the behavioral data in the common BIDS file conventions. Now, of course, this does not create a JSON file, has not created a JSON file yet, which we can create right now. So again, we can create it here. We're running this function at the bottom. You will have to specify all these variables once for every project. Again, here you should input all the names for all the columns and give a brief description of what these variables mean, so that someone who is not in the loop about the details of your experiment can also understand what the variables mean. And now we can run this function, and you'll see that it creates the JSON file that we were hoping to create. Now, finally, we can run this final set of code. This creates some metadata about the experiment. This will be written in the root directory right here. And this is useful to do for every project, just to have all the information in one place. Finally, you also need to edit the README file and write information about your experiments, potentially trigger information if it's not already included above, and anything else there is to know about the experiment. And finally, we can go to a BIDS validator. We can specify the path structure where our project is located. In this case, it's over here. Upload the file structure, and we can see if it's congruent with all the conventions. We'll see that we get either errors or warnings. I'll get to this warning in a moment, but here you can already see that it contains one subject, one session, which is correct. Task name is correct, and we see the EEG modality here. We do get a warning here about the behavioral data, as this is something that is not included in the validator because it's a more customized script that I added it in there. So it will give you a warning for the behavioral script. But other than that, everything is organized well. And you can do this for every subject, every session, every run that you'd like to include. And details can be found in the GitHub repository. Hopefully this was useful, and good luck.